And that's always been my whole thing, and have lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play gay roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that shit because the man card means everything.
And even speaks on Diddy trying to basically have sex with him. He also talks about Justin Bieber.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while.
Girl, imagine stepping into a room, thinking you're about to rehearse a scene, only to realize it's not a role they want you to play. It's your soul they're after. Hollywood's dark underbelly has always been talked about in whispers. But when Terrence Howard sat down to speak, he didn't whisper, he roared. With a career marked by powerful performances and an aura of authenticity, you'd never think Terrance would be the one to walk away from the limelight, or be the one to boldly confront the industry's most taboo truths. But what if I told you he almost lost it all? Not because he wasn't good enough, but because he refused to play along. Yep, Terrance revealed that a high-profile figure, someone we'll just call Mr. Puffy for now, invited him over under the pretense of an acting gig. But what unfolded was far from professional. And babe, this wasn't just a casual misunderstanding. What started as a seemingly harmless invite turned into something chillingly symbolic. The classic Hollywood test: will you sell your soul for success? Terrance was offered more than just a job. He was offered power, connection, and influence, all tied with a bow of compliance. The cost, his values, his masculinity, and his identity as a man. And let's be clear, this wasn't the first time someone powerful in the industry tried this on him. He said, "I've lost business, I've lost roles, but I've never lost my man card." In his words, once you give that up, there's no getting it back. Now, here's where it gets even darker. Terrance described Hollywood as a space where broken people walk around wearing million-dollar suits, but carrying billion-dollar pain. He mentioned actors who've spiraled, people like Heath Ledger and Philip Seymour Hoffman, not because they weren't talented, but because the emotional cost of the industry was too high. And what leads to that spiral? According to Terrance,
and they got to keep getting high, hoping to get it out of their head, but when you lose your man card, that's the only thing I can think of. You lose your damn man card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man.
When you start trading your integrity for opportunity, you don't just lose roles, you start losing yourself. He called it losing your man card. And girl, he meant it. Not in a toxic masculinity way, but in a spiritual way. He wasn't just talking about masculinity, he was talking about the soul of a person being chipped away piece by piece for fame. And then came the bombshell. When Terrance declined Diddy's strange offer, his assistant pulled him aside and told him flat out, "I think he's trying to f you." Excuse me? Yup, that's when it hit Terrance. The acting gig was never about acting. It was a test, a twisted kind of initiation into a world he wanted no part of. And when he said no, radio silence, projects disappeared, connections faded, but what he held on to was himself. And that's just scratching the surface. In the next part, we'll dig deeper into the layers of manipulation in Hollywood, the coded invitations, and the psychological games that leave even the strongest actors spiraling into substance abuse and shame. What if the biggest actors you know didn't rise to the top because of talent, but because they played a game no one warned them about? Terrence Howard wasn't just venting. He was unmasking an entire system, a system that doesn't just reward obedience, it demands submission. And baby, it ain't always about contracts and casting calls. Sometimes it's about what you're willing to give up behind closed doors. In that now viral interview, Terrance said something that hit like a punch to the gut. A man don't take it. A man gives it. But when you give up that man card, you don't get it back. Let that sink in. He wasn't just talking about roles or outfits or scenes. He was talking about something way deeper. About how some men in Hollywood are slowly stripped of their essence, traded like currency in a business that pretends to be all about art. But behind the scenes, it's about control. See, once you enter that world, you're constantly being tested. You might think it's just an audition or a callback, but Terrance says it's a setup, a slow erosion of boundaries. First, they ask you to play a role that challenges norms. Then it's a kiss, then it's a dress, then it's a little party invite. And suddenly, you're being asked for things that have nothing to do with acting at all. Terrance made it crystal clear. He draws the line. I don't bend over like that. I don't compromise. I don't play gay roles. I don't kiss a man. Because my man card means everything to me. And just like that, roles dried up. Directors stopped calling, producers backed off. And guess what? That's not by accident. According to Terrance, it's because once you say no to the game, Hollywood doesn't just leave you alone. It tries to erase you. But it doesn't stop there. Terrance said he watched other men fall into the trap. Some willingly, others unknowingly. He called it going fluid, and not in a judgmental way, but in a way that shows how losing your footing in this business can make you forget who you were in the first place. And when you do, that's when the real pain starts. He described seeing some of the most successful stars spiraling. Talented guys, the ones we grew up watching, suddenly disappearing behind dark sunglasses, dodging rehab rumors, and clinging to fame like it's the last thing keeping them alive. You've seen it. I've seen it. And now we're starting to understand why. Because when your soul has been traded in for stardom, no Oscar, no red carpet, no applause is loud enough to silence the guilt. And guess what? Hollywood knows that. That's how they keep people in line. Terrance even said it's not just men. Women too, trading bodies for roles, sacrificing dreams for screen time. And once the cameras stop rolling, they're left staring at their reflection, wondering where their dignity went. This isn't just a story about Terrence Howard. This is a mirror into the industry. You can win the game, take the prize, and still lose your soul. But what happens when you refuse to play at all? So, what actually happens when you don't bend, break, or bow? When you look power straight in the face and say, "No, I won't do that"? Well, if you're Terrence Howard, you get blacklisted. Not officially, of course. Hollywood would never admit it. But let's be real, silence is loud. After that strange encounter with Diddy, and his assistant's blunt warning that he's trying to fuck you, Terrance stopped receiving the same calls. Opportunities started drying up. People who once praised him suddenly didn't remember his number. And that's not just coincidence, sis. Hollywood loves a rebel, until that rebel disrupts the system. Terrance could have played along. He could have accepted the invites, worn the dress, kissed the man, and smiled for the camera like nothing was off. But that would have meant handing over the last piece of himself. And instead, he chose the one thing most people fear: isolation. And let's talk about that for a second. He said flat out, "I've lost business because I don't compromise." He didn't even try to sugarcoat it, because he knows, and now we know, that integrity in this business is treated like a liability. But here's the twist. While Hollywood turned its back on him, Terrance didn't just sit in a corner and cry about it. Instead, he started creating something bigger. This man, who Hollywood tried to silence, turned to science. Yup, you heard that right, science. Terrance has been working behind the scenes on patents, theories, and models that could reshape the way we understand the universe. He literally said, "I've redefined the universe." And while that may sound dramatic, here's the gag. He's got the receipts, multiple patents, real research, a mind that's constantly building beyond the limits Hollywood tried to place on him. And if you thought acting was all he had to offer, baby, think again. But don't get it twisted. Terrance still acts, he still takes roles, he still pays bills like everyone else. But the difference? He's no longer dependent on an industry that wanted to own him. He's doing it on his terms, period. Now let's backtrack just a little, because here's the really sad part, the part that gets buried under red carpets and paparazzi flashes. Terrance said he's seen actors so broken by the things they've done behind the scenes that they can't even look themselves in the mirror anymore.
Losing out money, you got to take drugs. You're going through so much shit to try and deal with life.
They turned to drugs, alcohol, and anything to numb the shame. They achieved the dream, the fame, the money, the awards, but left their souls somewhere along the way. And guess what? No one talks about it. Until now. Terrance isn't just exposing Hollywood's dark secrets. He's warning people. He's showing the world that success without integrity isn't success at all. It's just a prettier form of pain. What if refusing to wear a dress could end your career? What if saying no to a joke role meant saying goodbye to the biggest paycheck of your life? For Terrence Howard, that wasn't just a what if. It was reality. Forget the invites. Forget the parties. This isn't about one producer or one mansion. This is about a system-wide script. And if you're a black man in Hollywood, that script comes with a dress. Let's talk about the real reason Terrence Howard may have been sidelined. It wasn't just about Diddy's strange behavior, it was about something far more dangerous. A decades-long agenda where powerful Black actors are only allowed to thrive if they soften their edge, become less threatening, and yes, sometimes put on a dress. And Terrance, he said no. See, long before he was ever cast in Iron Man, Terrance was already feeling the pressure, not just to act, but to conform. He said it himself. They don't let Black men be strong on screen unless it's aggressive or violent, but calm, masculine power? That's a threat. It's why we've seen Eddie Griffin, Dave Chappelle, even Cat Williams speak out. They all noticed a pattern. The moment a Black male actor starts rising, someone hands him a script. And in that script, there's a wig, heels, and a punchline. And guess what? If you say no, you're suddenly hard to work with, angry, or not marketable. Terrance didn't play that game. My father didn't raise sheep, he raised men. That's what he said. And for that, Hollywood started locking the doors. First, it was whispers about him being difficult. Then, they replaced him in Iron Man 2. Then, projects disappeared. Same thing that happened to Cat Williams when he refused $50 million deals because of the strings attached. And this goes way beyond pride. This is about identity, about a man trying to protect his image, his children, and his legacy from being twisted into a caricature. He said he wasn't going to remove chromosomes to fit someone else's narrative. That line? That's not just bars, that's pain. Because every time a Black actor says no to the dress, someone else says yes. And usually, that yes turns into box office success. But at what cost? Look at Brandon T. Jackson. He admitted he got the Big Mama's House 2 role after Kat refused it. Look at Kevin Hart. He joked about boundaries on live TV and then wore the dress on SNL. Suddenly, their careers took off. It's a pattern that's too obvious to ignore. So now, it's not just about who's wearing what. It's about why. Hollywood isn't asking white men to give up their masculinity. Only Black men. Terrance even said it. White actors can be strong and soft. But for us, the moment we try to own our power without a gimmick, they call it dangerous. They tried to dim his light, but he became the flame. Terrence Howard didn't just say no to Hollywood's sick games, he said hell no, and he never looked back. And while the roles slowed down, the invites stopped, and his name wasn't in lights the same way. He walked away with something most people in this industry will never have, his soul. Let that sink in. He could have played the part, could have smiled, nodded, and bowed down to the same system that swallowed so many others. But he didn't. He stood up, and that's why they tried to shut him out. But plot twist, they didn't shut him down. While they were out here exchanging power for silence, Terrance was building a different kind of empire. Remember when he said he's redefining the universe? That wasn't ego, that was truth. Terrence Howard, the same man who walked away from A-list fame, has been quietly working in the field of science and innovation. He's filing patents, developing tech, and exploring theories that could literally reshape the future. Because this man, he's not just an actor, he's a visionary. And while Hollywood tried to corner him into roles that didn't align with who he was, he decided to write his own story. One that doesn't end with a statue on a shelf, but with a legacy built on integrity, truth, and courage. And let's be real, girl. In a world full of puppets, it takes guts to cut your own strings. Terrance didn't just talk about standing up, he lived it. He didn't care about being canceled or called difficult or being left off someone's casting list because he knew that fame without self-respect is just a gilded cage. I don't bend over like that. I don't compromise because my man card means everything to me. Those weren't just words. That was a man drawing a line in the sand and daring the whole industry to cross it. And look, this isn't about attacking certain lifestyles or roles. This is about consent, about authenticity, and about calling out a system that thrives on coercion while pretending to be inclusive. There's a huge difference between someone living their truth and someone being pressured into a lie just to survive in the industry. Terrence Howard wasn't trying to be Hollywood's golden boy. He was trying to be a man his children could look up to, a man who could still sleep at night, a man who didn't flinch when he looked in the mirror. And now, people are starting to listen. His words hit differently today. In the post-Me Too, post-Diddy accusation world, the stuff he said years ago suddenly doesn't sound so crazy. It sounds like truth. And that's the scariest thing for an industry built on secrets. So yeah, maybe Terrance won't get the roles he used to. Maybe Hollywood won't ever fully embrace him again. But girl, legacy? That's something you build, not something they hand you. And Terrence Howard is building his brick by brick on a foundation that can't be bought, faked, or sold. So the next time someone says, "Why don't we see Terrance anymore?" tell them the truth. He's not gone. He just refused to play their game. And in the end, that might be the most powerful role he's ever played.